Hey everyone, whoops, wrong button. How about we do that button instead? Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Weekend Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. The Weekend Bullet today is going to look a little different. Today it's just me and Tom Walls. Tom, of course, is the senior instructor at the Firearms Academy of Seattle, good friend, and somebody that knows his way around a firearm and around the news. So I lean on Tom to come on as much as I can convince him to do so. Tom, thanks for coming along today, man. Hang on. I have got an audio issue. And why do I have an audio issue? We're about to find out. Because I had Tom coming through just fine until, there we go. Let's try that again.
Are we live and on the air now, Paul?
We have been
Okay.
live and on the air. And now I can hear you and everybody else can too.
Well, how that works out, we have yet to see.
All right, I do want to remind everybody if you're watching live and you're watching on Facebook or YouTube on the Polite Society podcast channels, go ahead and comment on those and we'll get your comments, get them up on the air, discuss them as we're live on the air. And then if you're watching us anywhere else, either go to those channels or you can email me, Paul at politicsandguns.com. If I get the email while I'm still on the air, we'll go ahead and comment on that as well. This weekend, of course, the weekend show is always a week in the review show. I want to start off with this story out of New Jersey. A federal judge in New Jersey on Tuesday granted a preliminary injunction in part against certain tenants in the Garden State's revised gun permit law, Chapter 131, chalking a win for the Second Amendment Foundation and its lawsuit partners. In her meticulously researched 235-page ruling, Chief U.S. District Court Judge Renee Marie Bum writes, quote, the Constitution leaves the states some measures to combat handgun violence, but what the Second Amendment prohibits the states from doing and what the state of New Jersey has done here with much of Chapter 131 is to prevent law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their right to keep and bear arms. That is plainly unconstitutional. This was a joint lawsuit by SAF, CNJFO, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, Firearms Policy Coalition, and 3 private citizens. I'm going to skip down. I'm going to go to a quote from Adam Kraut, our SAF's executive director. He said, today's order granting our preliminary injunction against the state of New Jersey's anti-carry law reaffirms that the rule of law is alive and well after the Supreme Court decided Bruin last summer. The state of New Jersey enacted a series of restrictions that were wholly incompatible with the Constitution and disregarded the Supreme Court's directive. It's unfortunate that a lawsuit was required in order to force the state to respect its residents' constitutional right to bear arms. We look forward to continuing to litigate these issues in New Jersey and across the nation to ensure constitutional rights are not meaningless words on paper. Tom, I'm going to I'm going to break down what has been struck down of the New Jersey law. That all private party, unless posted to allow firearms, was restricted. Public gatherings, demonstrations, or events requiring a government permit was struck down, as well as carrying in zoos, parks, beaches, recreational areas, and state parks, public libraries and museums, bars and restaurants that serve alcohol, entertainment facilities, casinos, medical offices and ambulatory care facilities, public film sets, and the big one, in vehicles. In today's society, Tom, if you can't carry in your vehicle, you can't carry, man.
I'm looking at this list and I'm doing the thoughtful beard stroke. Let me preface anything I say today by reminding all of you that I'm just a retired pharmacist and firearms instructor. I'm not an attorney. My opinions are my own and not necessarily those of the Firearms Academy of Seattle. But by God, I have an opinion, and this is egregious. You talk about the in vehicles. Anywhere you want to go pretty much involves being in a vehicle. So if you can't have a firearm in a vehicle, you're precluded from having it for the duration of your trip. I'm looking at the one that says in zoos, and for the life of me, all I think of is they're worried about illegal hunting. It's almost like a scattergun of insanity of these places they're throwing out. But the one that hit me for something that happened in my life today, when I talked about all private property unless posted to allow firearms. And we've seen this before. I'm trying to remember the state, but if you have a business that says, well, we don't mind if people have firearms there, they actually have to post a sign. Otherwise, you assume you're not allowed to. So this morning, my wife and I went to not really a funeral, a celebration of life for the husband of an old friend and mentor of mine. And
Sure.
it really was wonderful. It was at a nice Lutheran church. And my wife and I are not Christian. We're not anti. We just practice faith. And we're sitting back there, and we're being us. And we're looking for the fire extinguishers, and we're looking for the exits, of which there were few, and we were looking for cover, of which there was none. And we're looking to see if just by chance this very large and fairly financially well-off old church had a security team. And if they did, I didn't spot them, and I got a pretty good idea where to look and what to look for. So had I been in that state under that law in New Jersey, we would have not been able to carry our firearms in the car to the location, this really nice church with, I'd guess, maybe 150 people, all sitting with their back to the door, with the main entrance would have been covered by someone coming in with evil intent, wearing all their jewelry.
Yes.
The sounds being drowned out by this magnificent pipe work. I was carrying because it's legal in my state, but even then, I didn't see a sign on the door that said guns are fine. How are people supposed to protect themselves if the state takes everything away? If they can make these exceptions to the Bruin decision from last year, like New York did almost instantly, and they have in my home state here in Washington, New Jersey, Illinois, California, ad nauseum. It's frightening to me that they can throw this stuff out knowing that it will probably be overturned, and yet we have to suffer under that law because we're the good guys and the bad guys don't give a rip one way or the other. I mean, explain that. If there's a listener out there, explain that to me, the logic behind it, or the strategy behind the anti-gunners wanting to do this to us.
Well, let's face it. Nobody, even on the trying to. What I love to do is to sink my thoughts into the other person's head, and criminals don't think they're going to get caught. Generally, they think whatever they're going to do, they're going to get away with, and robbing people is illegal. Murdering people is illegal. Assault is illegal. They don't go to do these things thinking they're going to get caught. They don't think they're taking the lazy way out, but they don't see consequences in anything they do. So making things super illegal or double secret probation, so to speak, is not going to affect them.
Who was it that used to say all the time, they're not like us? Was that Dr. April? It's hard for good people, especially good church-going people. I love a good practicing Christian. They're some of the best friends you could ask for, trying to do the right thing in life, trying to be better people, and I applaud them for practicing their religion. Here's 150 of them, and they are doing, what they need to do. I would doubt that anybody else in there was armed. I just didn't get that vibe. Bad guys don't care. When I worked in law enforcement as a reserve officer and other parts of my life where I spent a lot of time with recovering addicts, that's true. They don't expect to get caught. Or if they're really criminals, like, well, I got a good lawyer. We arrested one guy. We're reading him his rights, and he's yelling to his girlfriend, "Call my bail bondsman." Show of hand, folks, all you good citizens out there, you good guys with guns. How many of you have my bail bondsman? How many of you have a bail bondsman that you deal with on a regular basis? You know, what does that involve? They're not like us. They don't care. You are the ATM that has their money. Why are you giving me such a hard time? I am going to punish you for being arrogant.
I do not. The one card I have in my wallet that has a phone number on it, and it sits right behind my concealed carry permit. And there's a hint, because if I actually have to show my concealed carry permit, this card is right behind there is the card for ACLDN and the emergency phone number on the back of that card. So
I'm not laughing at you. I have exactly the same setup.
So let me get a comment in here real quick. This from Jesus Force / Bird of Michigan. I think he may know you. Mean Tom? Tom and I, per my third grade teach back in '67, I know Tom as Evil Tom.
Evil Tom.
So, yeah.
I was not in third grade in '67. I'm a little older than that. But
all right. Let's go ahead and go to our next story. And it's somewhat on the same kind of topic we were talking about on the first one, Tom. This press release from SAF. The Second Amendment Foundation has filed a federal lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of SB 1, a bill signed by Governor Wesley Moore, which has added new restrictions on where legally licensed citizens may carry firearms for personal protection. Joining SAF are Maryland Shall Issue, Firearms Policy Coalition, and 3 private citizens. SB 1 was enacted in response to the Supreme Court's ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin last year, said SAF founder and executive vice president Alan Gottlieb. Instead of trying to comply with the new guidelines set down in that decision, Maryland lawmakers scrambled to make guns laws more restrictive than they were before. Indeed, the additional restrictions make it nearly impossible to legally carry firearms for personal protection, even on public land. This is government regulation at its worst. And then I'm going to go to a quote from Adam Kraut, again, our executive director. There is no well-established representative historical analog for the carry prohibitions included in SB 1, which appears to be in direct conflict with the Supreme Court's directive set forth in Bruin. The new law bans permitted carrying in facilities where alcohol is served, in healthcare facilities, even in museums. These restrictions are facially unconstitutional under the Second Amendment, forcing us to take action in court. So we've already covered New Jersey. Maryland has a very similar law that they've passed and has been signed into law. This one was very similar to the Washington State assault weapons ban. Within a few hours of it being signed, this lawsuit was filed. So SAF wasted no time in getting this one into court.
I'm impressed with SAF and Firearms Policy Coalition and some of the others that have sprouted up. There's certainly enough abrogation of rights being attempted for all of our organizations to do well. I'm a life member of Second Amendment Foundation and proud to do it. My wife used to write for a publication, Women and Guns, that used to be hard copy by Second Amendment Foundation. So it's kind of a hot button issue at our house. We have to make sure we don't drag the soapbox with us when we go out in public and socialize with other people. But does this law not look like a cheap carbon copy of the others that we've been discussing so far? Museums. I don't recall there having been any museum mass murders, but I suppose it can happen. It's just it's that typical trick of having an emotional phrase. Sensitive areas, I think, is the buzzword now, right?
Right.
It's a sensitive area, and we don't want sensitive areas. And we can all think of things like elementary schools, whatever that might be, but they're not defining it when they talk about it. But then they'll define sensitive area in law, and that's the definition that all that stuff's going to be held to. I'm afraid they're going to just keep adding to that. Well, we want to have some more sensitive areas, and people will stop at that headline. And of course, who doesn't want guns away from sensitive areas? And that, of course, is assuming that the bad guys go, man, I was going to shoot up the museum, but it's a sensitive area and I can't go there. I guess
I
I'll
think
shoot
what
some.
we, and one of the things we try to do on our side is take control of the vernacular. And instead of sensitive areas, I think we should probably start talking about things like soft targets. When they say we need more sensitive areas, we need more soft targets is what they're really trying to say.
Well, when the media has such a representation of people that are not us, those are folks that know how to use the language well and how to evoke an emotional response. That's what they have to do for their bread and butter. They've got to get you to watch the show or the news broadcast. They've got to make it interesting enough so you tune back in, so they can have a viewership, so they can sell the advertising that pays for the salaries that feeds their lunch.
Well, when I was growing up, and I studied media in school, and that's what I went. When I went to college. That was what I was studying, was mass media. And when I was, in the late 80s, the big thing in media was sex sells, and everything, the advertisements had to be very sexy. Now, I hate to say it, but fear sells. And you can see it in the headlines. Is your soda going to kill you? More on the other side of the break when we come back.
It is a hook. You can see it both sides of any issue will play it too. I mean, pro 2A people will play it. I don't want them to take my guns. That's a hot button phrase for us. Take your guns. I had an old and very, very dear friend have a change of heart after he got married to a progressive, and he said, "Well, Tom, we were talking about gun control. I'll come take your guns." And I kind of caught myself and told him, "Well, that would be an interesting day." And we had a much more restrained relationship after that. And that's a hot button issue for me.
Yes.
And there's a lot of that stuff out there. But if you get somebody wrapped up and emotional, kind of escalated rather than de-escalated, we've talked about de-escalating before, you can get them escalated and amped up and thumping the table, you can talk them into all kinds of stuff. And that's what they need to do to take us out of our logical minds, that criminals are not like us. They don't think the way we do. Philosophers have said for years, good men don't really need laws, and bad men will ignore them. It's
yes.
Just a standard we're expected to hold to, and a penalty for breaking them. But like you said, they don't fear the penalty. And if they do get caught with today's prosecutorial climate, what are the chances of them getting back out? There's that case here in Lewis County, Washington. A man was shot at a campground, and they know who did it. It was one of those, I hear a noise in the campground in the dark, bang, I wonder what I hit. And it was so badly handled that nobody's been prosecuted, not even for manslaughter. The victim's family has now filed a several $1 million lawsuit against the county. But there's so little faith in the ability of law enforcement and the courts to follow through, either by intent or by ability.
Yeah.
That the bad guys are going, we've got a law in Washington that they've recently tried to undo a little bit, that the police cannot chase someone. They can't do a vehicle chase unless they have probable cause of, fairly heinous crime. Not reasonable suspicion, which is a much lower standard. So if somebody's speeding, that does not meet that standard, and they can't pursue it. Guess what? People that otherwise had not done this are now going, they're waving with just one finger, bye-bye to the police, hit the gas, and they're gone. And unless the police happen to get a tag or can tie that to some other crime, the number of runaways for speeding tickets have skyrocketed.
Yes. And the danger to the general public, I'm guessing, has has skyrocketed as well, because you got people who have no experience doing it, no training doing it, doing a $120 in a 70-mile-an-hour zone, weaving in and out of traffic, and mom in her minivan gets clobbered.
Yeah, well, that just goes back down to more bad judgment. It's not a closed course.
No. Let's the next one. And I hate to have so many bad news stories in a row.
Yeah, you were kind of a downer today, Paul.
Next story we got: the Supreme Court has denied a request by the National Association of Gun Rights and an Illinois gun owner to halt enforcement of the state's ban of the sale of modern sporting rifles and possession of large capacity magazines, issuing a brief statement to the effect that no noted dissents from any of the conservative justices on the bench. The brief order in Beavis versus Naperville provides no explanation for the decision, although it does mention that Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who received the request from NAGR and its attorneys, referred the request to the full court for its consideration. This is definitely a disappointing development, though not entirely unexpected. The request for an emergency injunction came as the Seventh Circuit is considering multiple challenges to the state's ban, including 4 cases heard by U.S. District Judge Stephen McGlynn, who did grant an injunction late last month that was stayed by an order from the Seventh Circuit Judge Frank Easterbrook less than a week later. These cases are still pending for a full hearing on a request for an injunction, along with Beavis versus Naperville, which is on a separate track in the Seventh Circuit. So basically, my understanding of what happened here, Tom, is the Seventh Circuit has got this on a fast track. And in a separate filing, in a separate case, the Supreme Court had a case from the Second Circuit that they sent back, and they said, oh, by the way, Second Circuit Court of Appeals, do not drag your feet on this. We'll be watching. We expect you to move quickly. Not their exact words, my paraphrasing. Seventh Circuit has already fast-tracked these, and so the Supreme Court is basically saying, let's see what the Seventh Circuit does, and then we'll see if we need to step in.
I think the Ninth Circuit is looking at that too, with California and hopefully the state of Washington. Help me out here. We were all happy when they had that initial injunction. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to remember the premise that they were basing the stay on. You recall? I did the in common use thing that they said was not sufficient for the injunction, and that's why they issued the stay. But my memory's a little fuzzy on that.
My understanding is that the reason the initial judge issued the stay was that the state didn't even come close to proving that they had grounds for this law to pass under Bruin's to clear Bruin's scrutiny, that there was historical analog. Okay,
the initial injunction.
Yeah.
And then the stay that overturned that. Basically overturned it. It sticks in my head. It was they were saying not in common use, which is of course ridiculous. There are more AR-15s in use privately possessed than I actually looked this number up. Google is your friend. There are more AR-15s in private hands than there are Ford F-150s on the road right now.
Wow.
A large, 24 to 24.5 million, depending on which survey. The AR-15s, and about 14.5 million or so for the F-150s. That definitely meets in common use. But the cool thing about this, and I suspect with my little non-legal gunsmoke befuddled brain, that this may be a fortuitous thing. It's drawing the process out longer than we'd like. I mean, I would like an instant win anywhere for Second Amendment rights, civil rights. But it's showing the possible strategies of those that want these laws passed. I hate to say opposition because they're fellow citizens. We just don't agree on a basic fundamental right. So it's almost like getting a practice to feel your opponent out, to see what their strategies are, and then you can develop an argument for them.
Right.
If any listeners know anything different or have any ideas about that, I'd love to hear it. That's a conceit of mine that I can see the future. But I can't help but think that that's going to work out well in court. Now we know, oh, there's another possible thing that a judge is listening to. We should make sure we have that argument fully developed from our point of view presented to the court.
Yeah, absolutely. With this, and going back to your F-150 and AR-15s, I'm drawing. We had our spring range day. Susan and I and a lot of our friends get together, and we go out to the range twice a year, usually once in the spring, once in the fall. We didn't do it last year because I was still recovering from my stroke and cardiac issue, but we did it today. And I personally got to help teach 2 brand new shooters to shoot, and had a wonderful time doing it. But in the firearms that got brought to the range today, rifles in general, specifically ARs, but AR pattern rifles, there were makes of all kinds there, but AR rifles outnumbered handguns even at the range today. And I brought 5 different handguns of 4 different makes, and that was me, and still ARs outnumbered handguns at the range today.
Well, think about it. How long have they been available for sale? For those of you that don't know, the AR-15 was originally developed for a civilian market. The military picked it up because it was lightweight.
Yes. And I believe the original AR was designed by Eugene Stoner in 1957.
That's the number I remember. I've seen the ads for it. That the reprint is proof of this point we're making right now. The Colt, when Colt picked up the patent, the Colt Sporter. Mm-hmm. It didn't have the bolt assist and stuff, but it was for small varmints. It was for small game. Chambered in 223 Remington, a little varmint caliber. Yeah. And we all know that the collapsible stock, just the ergonomics of the system, even though that the layout of the controls has been used now by a lot of other manufacturers, where the internal mechanics are completely different. You can get an IWI Tavor X95 rifle that the internals are completely different, and in the same calibers as you can get an AR-15, in 5.56.
Yeah.
The controls are in the same place, just inside the receiver. They work differently. The mechanics of the parts are. But it's such an ergonomic layout. It's so easy to use. There's so little felt recoil. It's adjustable for anybody. My wife, if you recall, we tease her, has got these little T-Rex arms. So she says she's a small arms instructor. And she's her own AR. She's got a fixed stock, but it's like really, 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 really teeny tiny short length of pull to accommodate that. When I was a cop, if we had to do an entry, we've got the body armor on. You have to have a shorter stock to accommodate for the thickness of the body armor. It just makes one rifle very utilitarian.
Well, and I'm reminded that someone we both know gave me this explanation. And the more I bring it up, the more true it becomes for me. The AR is everybody's rifle. More specifically, it's a women's rifle. It can be collapsed down. It can be made to fit a lot of different body sizes, but specifically for ladies, with the collapsible stock, with all the options, you can make it exactly what each person needs, and it changes so quickly to other people.
And in my world, I know a lot of ladies, pretty much all my lady friends, because that's the world I live in, are AR shooters, and a number of them much better with an AR than I am. And I know one gal that has everything kind of in a Cerakoted pink. and she'll shoot rings around me on the range.
Mm.
She's got a rifle that fits her, that's designed where she can handle it and not have something oversized. Well, my dad tried to teach me how to shoot a shotgun. I was about 12, and it was his gun, and he put a rubber pad on the butt, the slip-over jobs,
Yep.
to get some cushion. So I'm out here with this shotgun. The length of pole is so long, it's sliding off my shoulder this way.
Well, and with a length of pole that long, you're naturally leaning back more anyway.
Yeah, so my center of gravity is far back, and I had respectively well. I couldn't hit the inside of a barn from inside the barn. So one thing I have seen instructors do, Gila Hayes used to do this. She'd jump in and we teach an instructor's class, and she would take a standard sized gun and put some kind of padding around the grip, usually a long gun or a revolver worked really well for this. And it would hand it to a male instructor and say, this is what your female students are going through. When they have to shoot these guns, you need to figure out how to teach them. When I was working for one of the law enforcement agencies that I really enjoyed, one of the female officers was about 5'1" or 5'0". The department issue gun at the time was a Glock 21. And for those of you not familiar with the Model 21 from Glock, that is a big freaking fat 45 ACP double stack polymer grip, and she had little itty bitty hands.
It's a big gun for my hands, and my hands are not tiny.
Yeah, and I don't have big hands either. I don't like the Glock 21. We had one in the house for a while. For that reason, I can shoot it, but that's one reason I've got a big fat bump on one knuckle here. Shooting the heavy handguns, and it depends on there rather than the web of my hand where I can pick the shock up. Something that fits your hand is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Let's see here. I want to get to a little bit of good news.
Oh, please. It's been a tough week in the news.
Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo has vetoed all 3 gun bills placed on his desk. SB 171, AB 354, and AB 355 all passed the Nevada legislature on Monday. I'm going to explain a little bit about these. AB 355 would have raised the age to buy a semi-automatic rifle to 21. In his veto of the bill, Lombardo said similar legislation has already been struck down by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on the grounds it is unconstitutional to ban people under 21 from possessing such firearms. SB 171 would have prevented a person convicted of a hate crime from owning a firearm for a period of 10 years following the conviction. Lombardo said that SB 171 would go much farther than existing laws on hate crimes and deprive individuals of the right to keep and bear arms. Lastly, AB 354 would have prevented the possession of a firearm within a certain distance of an election site. While he called the goals of the bill commendable, he said the scope of the bill is too broad and there is no notable history of gun violence at election facilities in Nevada. I was really worried. I was really worried about this because this guy is on record as being pro red flag law. This guy was a sheriff in the past and not exactly a friend of the right to keep and bear arms, but it looks like he actually researched these. He found out they were going to get smacked. At least one of them would be smacked down by the Ninth Circuit, already had been in another state, and decided, rather than put my people through this, we're just going to stop where we're at.
I think you hit on something there when you said he must have researched that. I don't think that all politicians are evil. I know the temptation is there because of the power. I think it's largely a matter of education. Those people that are reasonable and decent, and there are a lot of them, that don't like guns, usually it's a lack of information or education, and apparently somebody went to the trouble to do this for the gentleman. The attempt to raise the age to buy a semi-automatic rifle to 21, I can understand the arguments. I've seen them. There's some merit to them, but it's a matter of constitutionality. You're either a citizen or you're not. I don't think the Constitution provides for provisional citizenship or 50% or 72% citizenship. You either are or you're not. And we can all go into the stories of, I've got them. When I was in high school, I'd throw my hunting rifle in the back of the car and get a little hunting in before I went home for dinner. Today that would be frowned upon. We had rifle racks. The guys that had trucks, I always envied them because they had rifle racks. When I was in 5th grade, I took in a semi-automatic shotgun and a pump shotgun to show and tell. And
nice.
The teacher was really cool with it. She stored them behind her desk because I couldn't fit them in my locker. Now, this was 1965. Times have changed. But it can be done. People that age can be responsible if they're taught. So, again, I keep bringing it back to this. Maybe it's the trainer in me. It's education. Our local high school in Onalaska. Now, a point of clarification, Firearms Academy of Seattle started out in 1990 in Seattle, renting space from a downtown indoor range. Quickly outgrew that, and the founder, Marty Hayes, found 40 acres in Onalaska, Washington, which is just off the interstate that goes directly between Portland and Seattle. We kept the name to keep regionality and because it had been established. We've got the facility. But the local high school came to us and said, hey, can I bring some high school kids to learn how to shoot pistols? And our current director, Val McCormick, said, let's talk. And they do that about 2 or 3 times a year now. Staff all volunteers for it. My point being that young people properly educated, and I suspect there were some conversations at dinner the night before at home. They're wonderful. They're wonderful. It can happen. But it's the educational thing. If we just teach kids that only bad guys and cops have guns, and video games where stealing and thieving and calling people names is okay, we're going to get the result of that.
You checked on something that we may go into in a future Training Friday edition of the Bullet. And that's video games and their use or disuse, possibly. But I'm gonna leave my commentary about that till then, because we could get into a 30-minute conversation. We don't have 30 minutes left about video games, but I'm right there with you, man. I see young people all the time. I seen them today. Young people. I've helped people as young as 8 years old learn to shoot.
Absolutely.
As long as mom and dad are there, as long as there is positive reinforcement of the rules of safety, and the kid shows the responsibility, the maturity to be able to handle it, I'm more than pleased to help.
I've only been to one gun set alumni match so far. It was the 45th, which they kind of did up as a big thing. About 230 or 40 shooters, extremely well run, so kudos to Ken Campbell and his crew. But there were a number of individuals shooting 10 years and maybe a little bit younger. Mm-hmm. Number of teenagers, and everybody's carrying loaded pistols with extra magazines on their hip all day long for about a day and a half social event punctuated by gunfire. Felt perfectly safe. These young people were well raised. There's no reason it can't happen. But it's not happening as much as we need to. So it's a matter of education. Do you need to be 21, brain developed and stuff? Yeah, there's some people, maybe not. But that's a constitutional issue, and if you really truly subscribe to the Constitution and you don't like it, you need to work to change it, not saying, yeah, we'll ignore it.
Yeah. Well, and you'll hear this from time to time, changing the Constitution, specifically from the other side. Every once in a while, you'll hear it from our side, but there's the Second Amendment. In order to repeal the Second Amendment or to change the Second Amendment, either way, in order for the Second Amendment to be amended, either gone or improved, and it would be hard to improve it, but you would need 3/4 of the state. You would need to get through both houses of Congress at 2/3, and then you would need to get 3/4 of the states to agree with it. Now, if you want it to go away, more than half of the states this year, 27 of them have said you don't even need a stinking permit to carry. Do you think you're going to get half of those states to go along with you getting rid of the Second Amendment?
Of course not. You make up those terrible words like phrases, assault weapons, sensitive place, get the populace really riled up and emotional. And that part of the brain is no longer engaging their critical thinking. And you can get a mob to do all kinds of stuff. That's the beauty of the Constitution. It's certainly not a perfect document, but it was deliberately written to be hard to change, to keep these emotional swings, keep the idea of pure democracy, mob rule. That's why it's, as a republic, a constitutional republic. We've been able to do that. And, of course, we can get on the Second Amendment being the reason why soapbox. With this audience, I don't think we need to.
Well, and
but
the Constitution absolutely can be changed because we had it with in about 100 years ago, the 18th Amendment went through that banned the sale of alcohol throughout the United States. And then,
how was that working for us?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody calls it prohibition. And that really didn't work. And then it was changed again, a little more than a decade later, when they repealed the 18th Amendment with the 21st Amendment. So, and I'd forgotten I'd put this next story in, but you are the perfect person to talk about this with, Tom. I got this off 943thepoint.com. This is a New Jersey radio station. And the title of the article is, "Can You Legally Shoot Trespassers in New Jersey?" And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put it in the URL. I'm going to put the URL in the comments for the both the YouTube and the Facebook
Get that cute little
streams. But it's an amazingly well written article. I was stunned at how well this was written. Where I get, I'm gonna get three paragraphs towards the end of the story. U.S. Law Shield says that New Jersey still wants you to warn the other party before using deadly force. And this is where I love this writer. Listen, I know it's impossible to go through all these rules and regulations while you're in the moment. That's why if you own a firearm and keep it in your home, it's very important to educate yourself on what it can and cannot be used for. I'm going to say that's not just New Jersey. If you own a firearm, learn your local laws no matter where you're at. If you're in the United States, you need to know the laws where you're at to know if you're going to be in trouble for doing what you end up doing. Now, let me say this. Warning, and this to me means a verbal warning, that you have to verbally warn somebody before you use deadly force. Oops, Mr. Bad Guy, you better stop pointing that handgun at me because I've got my own handgun and I will shoot you with it. You'll never get that full sentence out of your mouth.
One thing that we emphasize, especially in our beginning classes that discuss law at Firearms Academy Seattle, is that if you have a personal moral code, we're not telling you what that code should be, religious or philosophical, but if you have a stricter moral code than the law and you follow your moral code, you'll be okay. The people that wrote this law obviously have no experience in deadly force encounters, have not researched them. And Paul, you're exactly right. You're not going to have time to say that. It would be nice, and it might be a nice bluff, reach back, touch the gun. Hey, don't want any trouble. It's very clear that I've got my hand on a firearm. The body language is there. Nothing happens. That's great. That's my preferred outcome. But it's a ridiculous requirement. If the person was justified in shooting, The warning, I am at a loss. I can't see any use for it whatsoever.
Yeah,
You know, the display of a handgun is I've got the ability to stop you from doing what you're doing. You know, the implied thing is, so please stop. You need to look at that moral code and that are you justified in employing deadly force? But that's like asking permission before you can hold hands and kiss. It's a great idea from the good idea fairy, but the real world situations, it's a bit of a stretch.
yeah. And I want to use this, and I'm because we didn't have a training Friday. This Friday, this was not Tom's Friday. I want to branch off on an impromptu little bit of training Friday, and I think I know Tom's answer to this before I ever ask it, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I want Tom to answer it. What's your shot? What's your take on warning shots, Tom?
No. A couple reasons. Especially if you are of a mind and a personality to carry a 5-shot revolver, you've just given up 20% of your ammo capacity. A warning shot. Oh my God, there's so many things. Well, for one thing, I'm using deadly force to give a warning, and in court that could be so you used deadly force, but you're admitting you didn't need it because it was just a warning. Tactically, there's no advantage to it. The ammo situation is something, and also, where's that bullet going? Firing in the air. It's got to come down somewhere. There's just too much risk of legal jeopardy for recklessness, tactical jeopardy for giving up something you don't need to give up, and a risk of failure in your situation. No. Answer's no. Don't do it.
All right, I want to get a couple comments in here. Mike White, 2A Abisky, is quoting our at the time vice president. Give a blast in the air, and he then says, "Yeah, I was quoting Brandon." Yeah, and not only that, Brandon was saying to do that with a double-barreled shotgun, which means giving up 50% of your ammo.
Actually, he said 2 blasts. He said go to the window and fire 2 blasts. So I've got a deadly force situation. I'm going to walk away from the bad guy. Well, that's good.
Yes.
And anybody else in the room under my mantle of protection, my legal mantle, my moral mantle of protection, I'm going to abandon them, go to a window, fire at random or through the door, 2 blasts, not knowing where those projectiles are going to come down, empty my gun, and then go back in the room where an armed person may have my wife at gunpoint.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't vote for it. Don't blame me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. If I have time and it makes sense, verbal warning, yes. If I have time and it makes sense, but anything beyond verbal.
Verbal warning. Hey, don't want any trouble. Take a couple steps back. There's always going to be a witness or a camera somewhere. Work on that assumption. You know, if I reach back, you can't see it on camera. Well, you wouldn't see it in reality. I've got my hand on a handgun right now. It won't come out to make, don't want to make YouTube unhappy. But I'm ready. This is kind of a universal language. I'm giving an implied warning. I'm capable and I'm willing to use force to stop you. Do you really want to go here? Hopefully the answer is no.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you come down my quarter-mile-long driveway, break through my barricaded door in the middle of the night at dark 30, giving a warning is not the first thing on my mind.
Yeah. Stopping the attack is much higher priority.
If I'm going to tell them anyway, it's going to be leave. And after that,
I have had voice training in my life, and I'm fortunate in that. And when I said I went to college for broadcast media, part of that was voice training. So you get a good radio voice. And part of that is using volume effectively. I have got what I've been told is an excellent range voice. And when I say stop, it can be heard for a few blocks. Again, that's that. Is that enough to cover a New Jersey warning? I don't know.
My
But
God, what they put into the language, it must be sufficient volume and timbre. Some more soft words. I don't have much of a speaking or singing voice. And when I come off a weekend at the range, when I was at my career job that bought my ammo, people would say, "Oh, you work this weekend," and I would go, "How can you tell?" Because my voice. But in martial arts, I developed the kiap, the ki, the sharp barking noise. That carries, and I've been known to use that just to startle people because it's so unexpected.
yeah,
We had in the academy one of our reserve recruits. Very nice man. He was a real estate salesman, as I recall. And when he was giving commands for felony stop we were doing in mock scenes, his voice not only did not project, his vocal cords was tightened, and he sounded like Minnie Mouse. He did not have command voice. But to have that resonant, focused volume, from the diaphragm and all that stuff you guys in broadcast know how to do, with simple, clear commands spoken slowly and forcefully, that's one of the things that we teach. It's a little off script. It's not what somebody expects. It's inside their OODA loop. It's an unexpected response. They have to go back and reorganize their plan.
absolutely. And
If it doesn't work, you haven't lost anything.
exactly, you're exactly right. Not only your choice of words matters because there are certain words that project better than others. Stop is excellent.
Yeah.
The the O sound in stop can very forcefully be projected. And even if they don't hear anything else, when they hear that, they know they're going to hear the forcefulness there, and it's going to draw their attention. Other words, one that I hear people use every once in a while is shoot. Stop or I'll shoot. Ooh is a whole lot softer of a tone than the of stop. So,
And there's no question as to what's going to happen. Stop.
yes,
It means only one thing. I have used the command on the range, cease fire, if it's not an emergency. But if somebody's doing something really dumb with a gun in their hand on the range, what comes out of my mouth is stop.
yes,
Real loudly, right through their hearing protection.
absolutely. Well, we are.
Rather than, excuse me, person that broke in the house, I'm going to shoot you if you don't comply with my law.
Yeah. Stop
I can
and now.
Now's an immediate thing.
Yeah.
Like the military, you will proceed immediately. You will turn your aircraft immediately. That means don't question it. But imagine how that would play before a jury if you're trying to convince them that the defendant did not give clear commands, warning before they fired. It would be a circus.
Well, thankfully that in many states, if not most states, that's not an issue. I would still recommend, again, neither Tom or I are attorneys. We don't even play them on TV. Just do your own research, please. We are coming up. We've got about 7 minutes left. I don't want to get deeply into any more news stories, Tom, simply because I don't think we'll have time to do any of them justice. If you would, please, what's coming up? Firearms Academy of Seattle. You're getting into your busy season real soon, bud.
Like now. As we speak, we have got our bread and butter 2-day defensive handgun class going on. I happen to have the weekend off, but I will be the next bunch of weekends teaching. We've got our usual Firearms Academy of Seattle agenda, sometimes 2 classes simultaneously. We've got about 13 ranges, a little over 40 acres, and a staff that I love to work with. We have got, let's see, just to give you an example, we have close quarters carbine coming up. We have a week-long handgun class coming up for folks that can't take a lot of weekends, but want to do it all at once. We have the ability to have guest instructors, which is a boon to us. and to our students in the Pacific Northwest here, because you don't have to travel around the country. You can just come to us, stay in the nearby town for a couple of days of training with people like, let's see, we have John Farnham's coming in a week. We have Jared Rustin. We have Masada Youb coming for the 40-hour MAG 40 class. We have Craig Douglas coming for an extreme close quarters combat class in August. I mentioned Jared Rustin. Dark Angel Medical comes out. Steve Fisher is going to be out again in September. He's fairly regular. Tim Heron. I just rattle these names off because it's just amazing to me, because I'm a training junkie like a lot of my friends, that we have this ability to get everything in one place, and it saves a lot of time and travel. And it helps us as instructors be better instructors. So, best way to look at it, if you want to train in the Pacific Northwest where it rains all the time, please don't move here. Okay? www.firearmsacademy.com.
I think people moving there from a couple states south of you may have been what caused some of your recent firearms laws to get adopted. But anyway, I want to get this comment in from Roderick over on the Facebook side. Get the F out of here, as I pointed a gun at some intruders. Yeah. There was 5 seconds that was dangerous. Personally, adrenaline kicks in. You're going to use what you use. I personally try, because of my job, try very hard not to use swear words in my daily life. I think I would try to make things as simple and direct as I could, but get the F out of here. Certainly anybody's going to understand that. Maybe they'll ask you the definition of the F word. Probably not.
Well, that's the three components of making a threat like that. You have to be willing to carry it out. You have to be able to carry it out. So I'm willing to shoot you if I need to. I'm capable of it because I have a firearm, but the other guy's got to believe it. So you've got to make that forceful. Not like, please get out or I'll shoot you. That's like prey speaking. And if you drop an F-bomb in there, I don't think any court's going to get real upset.
I'm sure most judges have heard it before.
In public speaking, I avoid the word. I know the word. I love the word. But there are times when it's not a
On this show, you will not hear any. You won't. What am I trying? I'm trying the Private Pile, the movie. The Arlie Ermey was the drill sergeant, and he was going. Pardon?
Full Metal Jacket?
Yes, you will not hear Full Metal Jacket words on our airwaves, simply because I want to keep this family friendly. But as a trucker for 20 years, I've heard them all as well, and I know how to use them. I just try to keep them out of here.
Well, I think of it as being multilingual. With any level of society and blend in.
Absolutely. All right, man. We are going to cut it about a minute short. We're coming up on the end of the show here. Everybody, thank you for watching. All the commenters, thank you for commenting. Podcast listeners, do consider joining us some Saturday evening. 7 p.m. Central Time is our start time on Saturdays. Until then, everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.